Hello, my name is Milo, and today I'm going to be doing 26 books I want to read in 2026. So first, a little bit about me is I'm currently a sophomore in high school. I live in Washington, and I love books. But I really wanted to do this video as a way for me to kind of keep myself on track, because this year I'm trying to read 50 books. I know, and it's a lot, but if there's 52 weeks in a year, then if I read one book a week, I should be able to do it. But I have 26 books. Some I have physical, some I'm going to be reading off of my Goodreads. But yeah, let's get into it. So I'm going to be doing some books that I'm reading now that I do want to finish in 2026 as well. And one of these books is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Dust by V.E. Schwab. I'm really happy I got the signed hardcover edition. But basically, this book is about, it goes between three different time zones. It goes between 1532 in Santo Domingo de la Calzada, and then it goes to 1827 London and 2019 Boston, and it's about vampires. But I really like how the author is able to go between those three different times and make it kind of all flow together. Right now, I'm about a quarter into the book, but I really enjoy it. It's really interesting, and I can't wait to finish this book in 2026. The next book I have is The Only One Left by Riley Sawyer, I think. But I read one of his other books, Middle of the Night, and I really like how he's able to build suspense. I'll read. It says, at 17, Lenora Hope hung her sister with a rope. Now reduced to a schoolyard chant, the Hope family murders shocked the Maine coast one bloody night in 1929. While most people assumed 17-year-old Lenora was responsible, the police were never able to prove it. Other than her denial after the killings, she has never spoken publicly about that night, nor has she set foot outside Hope's End, the cliffside mansion where the massacre occurred. I think it sounds really interesting. I've heard this is one of his best books on Book Talk, and so I can't wait to read this book and see if it lives up to the hype or not. His other book, The Middle of the Night, I read. I thought it was good. It was just a very slow thriller, and I thought there was lots of fluff in the book and that it could have been a little shorter, but I'm really excited to read this book. Next, this is a book I've already read, but I do want to reread it in 2026, and that is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. This is a 5-star read for me. It's one of my favorite books I've ever read. A lot of people have mixed feelings about this book, but I really enjoyed it. It's about two brothers, Peter and Ivan Kobek, and Peter is a Dublin lawyer in his 30s, and Ivan is a 22-year-old competitive chess player, and it's a very, very, very interesting love story between Peter with a younger woman and then Ivan with an older woman. And so it's kind of opposites. And the characters are very, very realistic. I really enjoyed reading about them and their struggles and their love life and how they're going through life as they're discovering kind of who they are and what they want to do with their lives. And it's really emotional. I was crying at the end. But I really would like to reread this book because the last time I read it, I borrowed it from the library. And so now since I have a physical copy, I can put page tabs in to find my favorite moments from this book. But yeah, I'm gonna reread this book in 2026. And then another book from Sally Rooney I just borrowed from the library. I borrowed Beautiful World, Where Are You? And I'm very excited to read this book. Alice, a novelist, meets Felix, who works in a warehouse, and asks him if he'd like to travel to Rome with her. In Dublin, her best friend, Eileen, is getting over a breakup and slips back into flirting with Simon, a man she has known since childhood. Alex, Felix, Eileen, and Simon are still young, but life is catching up with them. They desire each other, they delude each other, they get together, they break up, they have sex, they worry about their friendships and the life they live in. Are they standing in the last lighted room before the darkness, bearing witness to something? Will they find a way to believe in a beautiful world? This book sounds very interesting. I can't wait to read another book by her because I thought Intermezzo was amazing. But yeah, I've seen this a lot on Book Talk, and I'm really excited to read this. Another book that I've seen a lot on Book Talk, and that I think everyone knows by now, is A Little Life by Hanya Yunga Ihari. I said that wrong. But anyways, I'm very excited to finish this book. I've started, that's about like a little less than a quarter into the book, but this book is so good. I know it's a very controversial book and lots of people have mixed opinions, but I really like how realistic it is. And I think if one word I could use to describe it so far is trauma. The characters are very emotional, lots of things have happened to them in the past. And this book is kind of going through each of the characters and talking about how they're dealing with that trauma and how their lives are going. And I really like how the author gets into detail about everything. One character can go on and on and on talking about the lunch they had that day or something. And I really enjoy how you're getting such a deep emotional connection to these characters. And even though I'm already only a quarter in, I'm very happy with how the author has drawn me into this book. And so I can't wait to finish this book as well in 2026. Now, going on to two books from the same author, Donna Tartt. First is The Goldfinch, this humongous book. I'm just going to read the blurb. Theo Decker, a 13-year-old New Yorker, miraculously survives an accident that kills his mother. Abandoned by his father, Theo is taken in by a wealthy Park Avenue family. He is bewildered by his strange new home and tormented by his longing for his mother, clings to the only thing that reminds him of her, a small, mysteriously captivating painting that has come into his possession. As an adult, Theo moves easily between the antique store, where he works, the drawing rooms of the rich, and the store and the underworld of art. He is alienated, unmoored, and in love, and drawn inexorably by the power of that painting into a narrowing, dangerous circle. I'm very excited to read this book. I've heard really, really good things about it. It is the winner of the Pulitzer Prize. But I thought this book would be a very interesting read. I've heard lots of good things about the author, and I'm very excited to dive into this book. Next, by the same author, is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This is a very popular book on Book Talk, and I feel like everyone has read it at this point. But under the influence of a charismatic classics professor, a group of clever, eccentric misfits at a New England college discover a way of thought and life, a world away from their banal contemporaries. But their search for the transcendent leads them down a dangerous path beyond human constructs of morality. I'm really excited to read this book. It's a pretty long book at like about 530 pages, but I'm very excited. I've seen it all over Book Talk. Lots of my friends have talked about it, and I'm very excited to read this book. Next is No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. I've heard really good things about it. It sounds really interesting. Portraying himself as a failure, the protagonist of Osamu Dazai's No Longer Human narrates a seemingly normal life even while he feels himself incapable of understanding human beings. Oba Yozu's attempts to reconcile himself to the world around him begin in early childhood, continue through high school, where he becomes a clown to mask his alienation, and eventually lead to a failed suicide attempt as an adult. Without sentimentality, he records the casual cruelties of life and its fleeting moments of human connection and tenderness. This is semi-autobiographical, and I'm really excited to read this book. I'm excited to dive into the character / the author's life, and like the title says, I want to see how someone feels if they're no longer human. I can kind of understand kind of what the author feels, but I'm very excited to learn more. Next is a book I've been reading forever, and I want to finish this year, is Apples Never Fall by Liane Moriarty. This book is about tennis. It's about this tennis family and the mom who goes missing, and how the children are starting to uncover more things about their parents and the relationship they had. And it's really interesting. I'm about halfway through the book. I really want to know what happened to their mom, why she's missing. But again, this is another book I want to finish this year. Next is this book I picked up from the library recently. Everyone Dies Famous in a Small Town. It's a short stories book, so it's pretty short, but it sounds very interesting. It's filled with stories that illuminate and connect the lives of young people from small towns in Alaska and across the American West, the repercussions of wildfire, a scurrilous priest, a mysterious disappearance, and a monstrous and unsolved crime ricochet across communities, linking stories in which love takes many forms, and ordinary actions such as ice skating or going to church reveal hidden truths. Siblings save each other, revenge is possible, and so is redemption. I'm excited to read this short stories book. It sounds really interesting. I saw the cover and I saw the title and I was intrigued because what do you mean everybody dies famous in a small town? But again, I'm very excited to read this book. I have 2 more physical books and then I'll go on to my Goodreads. Next is Blue Sisters by Coco Melors. I've seen it on Book Talk a lot. I've seen lots of people talk about it. That's a big trend with all these books. I've really gotten into reading this past year, and this year I want to read as much as I can. So, this book is about 3 estranged sisters who return to their family home in New York after their beloved 4th sister's death. In this unforgettable story of grief, hope, and the complexities of family from the acclaimed author of Cleopatra and Frankenstein, which I've heard a lot as well. But I'm really excited to read this book. I've heard really good things. I've heard that it's a very good book about family, grief, overcoming grief, and I'm very excited for this. Next is Lurkers, which I haven't heard a lot about. This is on a display shelf at the library, and I thought the cover was really interesting. So I wanted to read this book and see what it has in store. The residents of Santa Claus Lane do their best to stay out of each other's way, but desire, fury, and mischief too often propelled those suburban neighbors to collide. Precocious Korean-American sisters, Mira and Rosemary, find their worlds rocked by suicide, and they must fight to keep their home. A charismatic and creepy drama teacher grooms his students. A sardonic gay horror novelist finds that aging is more terrifying than any monster, and a white hippie mom and her adopted Vietnamese daughter realize that their anger binds them rather than pushes them apart. Lurkers is a homage to the rangy beauty of Los Angeles and the surprising power that we have to change the lives of those around us. This book sounds very interesting. It sounds very controversial with the descriptions of the characters, but I'm very excited to read and see how all of these characters maybe interconnect. But yeah, I'm very excited. So with that, I have 12 books on my physical TBR currently that I want to read, and so I'm going to dive into the rest on my Goodreads. So now I'm going to be reading off of my iPad the next 14 books that I wanted to read this year. But starting off is Evenings and Weekends by Osun McKenna. I've heard Jack Edwards talk a lot about this book, and I've heard tons of other people talk about this book as well, and I'm really excited. This is for fans of Sally Rooney and Torrey Peters, a taut and profoundly moving debut that follows a cast of intricately linked characters during a heat wave in London, as simmering tensions and secrets come to a head over one life-changing weekend. London 2019, it's the hottest June on record, and a whale is stuck in the Thames River. In the streets of the city, 4 old acquaintances want more from life than they've been given. On the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, their paths will intersect at a party that will change their lives forever. There's still more to the blurb, but I want to stop there. It sounds very interesting. It sounds like very similar from what I've heard to how Sally Rooney writes her books, and I love her books. So I'm very, very excited to dive into this one. Next is Martyr by Kav Akbar. I'm saying his name wrong probably. A newly sober, orphaned son of Iranian immigrants, guided by the voices of artists, poets, and kings, embarks on a remarkable search for a family secret that leads him to a terminally ill painter living out her final days in the Brooklyn Museum. Electrifying, funny, and wholly original, Martyr heralds the arrival of an essential new voice in contemporary fiction. Cyrus Shams is a young man grappling with an inheritance of violence and loss. His mother's plane was shot down over the skies of the Persian Gulf in a senseless incident, and his father's life in America was circumscribed by his work killing chickens at a factory farm in the Midwest. Cyrus is a drunk, an addict, and a poet whose obsession with martyrs leads him to examine the mysteries of his past, towards an uncle who rode through Iranian battlefields dressed as the angel of death to inspire and convert the dying, and towards his mother through a painting discovered in Brooklyn Art Gallery that suggests she may not have been who or what she seems. This book sounds really interesting. Again, I've seen it a lot on Book Talk. I've seen Jack's review of this book, and I'm really, really excited to read it. It's something that it's like delving into his past, his family's past, and I'm very excited to read it. The next book is Docile by K.M. Svazpara, but There's No Consent Under Capitalism. Docile is a science fiction parable about love and sex, wealth and debt, abuse and power, a challenging tour de force that at turns seduces and startles. To be a docile is to be kept, body and soul, for the uses of the owner of your contract. To be docile is to forget, to disappear, to hide inside your body from the horrors of your service. To be docile is to sell yourself to pay your parents' debt, to buy your children's future. Elisa Wilder's family has been ruined by debt, handed down to them from previous generations. His mother never recovered from the docile she took during her term as a docile. So when Alicia decides to try and erase the family's debt himself, he swears he'll never take the drug that took his mother from him. This book, it sounds really, really interesting. I've heard some people on Instagram talk about this book, and it doesn't seem, not a lot of people have talked about it, but I think it sounds very interesting. It sounds very controversial. I'm going to say that a lot, but I really am excited to read that book. Next, I have Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is a really, really popular book. It has literally almost 2 million ratings on Goodreads. So that means this is the third book from Sally Rooney I want to read this year. And the blurb goes, at school, Connell and Marianne pretend not to know each other. He's popular and well-adjusted, star of the school soccer team, while she is lonely, proud, and intensely private. But when Connell comes to pick his mother up from her housekeeping job at Marianne's house, a strange and indelible connection grows between the two teenagers, one they are determined to conceal. A year later, they're both studying at Trinity College in Dublin. Marianne has found her feet in a new social world, while Connell hangs at the sidelines, shy and uncertain. Throughout the years in college, Marianne and Connell circle one another, straying toward each other and possibilities, but always magnetically, irresistibly drawn back together. Then, as she veers into self-destruction and he begins to search for meaning elsewhere, each must confront how far they are willing to go to save the other. A lot of her books take place in Dublin, it seems, but I'm really excited to read this. I really like reading literary fiction, literary romance, and again, I'm very excited to dive into another book of hers. Next is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Again, this is a very, very popular book. I've heard lots of things about it. If you go on Book Talk, you're bound to see this book. But a life no one will remember, a story you will never forget. France 1714, in a moment of desperation, a young woman makes a Faustian bargain to live forever and is cursed to be forgotten by everyone she meets. Thus begins the extraordinary life of Addie LaRue and a dazzling adventure that will play out across centuries and continents, across history and art, as the young woman learns how far she will go to leave her mark on the world. But everything changes when, after nearly 300 years, Addie stumbles across a young man in a hidden bookstore, and he remembers her name. This is a very interesting kind of science fiction, fantasy-esque book, and I'm very excited to read it. From what I've read from Bare Bones at the Midnight Dusk, I really like her writing style, and I'm very excited to read another book by her. Next is Butter by Asako Yuzuki. Again, if you've been on Book Talk, you've probably seen this book, but the cult Japanese bestseller about a female gourmet cook and serial killer, and the journalist intent on cracking her case, inspired by a true story, which is very interesting. There are two things that I can simply not tolerate: feminists and margarine. Gourmet cook Manako Kaji sits in Tokyo Detention Center, convicted of the serial murders of lonely businessmen, who she is said to have seduced with her delicious home cooking. The case has captured the nation's imagination, but Kaji refuses to speak with the press, entertaining no visitors. That is until journalist Rika Mishida writes a letter asking for her recipe for beef stew, and Kaji can't resist, writing back, "Rika, the only woman in her news office, works late each night, rarely cooking more than ramen." As the visits unfold between her and the steely Kaji, they are closer to a masterclass in food than journalistic research. Rika hopes this gastronomic exchange will help her soften Kaji, but it seems that she might be the one changing. With each meal she eats, something is awakening in her body. Might she and Kaji have more in common than she once thought? Inspired by the real case of the convicted con woman and serial killer, the Konkatsu killer, Asako Izuki's Butter is a vivid, unsettling exploration of misogyny, obsession, romance, and the transgression pleasures of food in Japan. There's a lot going on. It's a very interesting book, and I like how it's inspired by a true story, which makes it even more interesting. I'm very excited to read this translated literary fiction book. It's not really fiction if it's based on a true story, but I'm very excited to read that book. Next is My Friends by Fredrik Backman. I've heard lots of really good things about this author, and I'm very excited to read this. #1 New York Times bestselling author Fredrik Backman returns with an unforgettably funny, deeply moving tale of 4 teenagers whose friendship creates a bond so powerful that it changes a complete stranger's life 25 years later. Most people don't even notice them. 3 tiny figures sitting at the end of a long pier in the corner of one of the most famous paintings in the world. Most people think it's just a depiction of the sea, but Luisa, an aspiring artist herself, knows otherwise, and she's determined to find out the story of these 3 enigmatic figures. 25 years later, in a distant seaside town, a group of teenagers find refuge from their bruising home lives by spending long summer days on an abandoned pier, telling silly jokes, sharing secrets, and committing small acts of rebellion. These lost souls find in each other a reason to get up each morning, a reason to dream, a reason to love. Out of that summer emerges a transcendent work of art, a painting that will unexpectedly be placed into 18-year-old Luisa's care. She embarks on a surprise-filled cross-country journey to learn how the painting came to be and decide what to do with it. The closer she gets to the painting's birthplace, the more nervous she becomes about what she'll find. Luisa is proof that happy endings don't always take the form we expect, in this stunning testament to the transformative, timeless power of friendship in art. I'm very excited to read this book. It's about friendship, it's about love, it's about hope, and it's about bonds we create with each other. And it's a fairly recent book, released in 2025, and so I'm very excited to read this book in 2026. Okay, so the next book is Beasts of the Little Land by Joo Hee Kim, and I'm gonna start off with the blurb. In 1917, deep in the snowy mountains of occupied Korea, an impoverished local hunter on the brink of starvation saves a young Japanese officer from an attacking tiger. In an instant, their fates are connected, and from this encounter unfolds a saga that spans half a century. In the aftermath, a young girl named Jade is sold by her family to Miss Silver's Courtesian school, an act of desperation that will cement her place in the lowest social status. When she befriends an orphan boy named Jung Ho, who scrapes together a living begging on the streets of Seoul, they form a deep friendship. As they come of age, Jung Ho is swept up in the revolutionary fight for independence, and Jade becomes a sought-after performer with a new romantic prospect of noble birth. Soon, Jade must decide whether she will risk everything for the one who would do the same for her. From the perfumed chambers of a Courtesian school in Pyongyang to the glamorous cafes of a modernizing Seoul and the boreal forests of the Manchuria, where battles rage, Ji Hoo Kim's unforgettable characters forge their own destinies as they wager their nations, immersive and elegant. And this sounds like a very interesting historical fiction. A lot of the stuff I read is very present, modern day, like pieces of literary fiction. And so I'm really excited to read something that I'm not used to reading. It sounds really interesting. I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about this book, and so I'm really excited to read something niche. Next is a really, really popular book that Jack Edwards said he really, really loved, and that's All Fours by Miranda July. An irreverently sexy, tender, hilarious, and surprising novel about a woman upending her life. A semi-famous artist announces her plan to drive cross-country from LA to New York. 20 minutes after leaving her husband and child at home, she spontaneously exits the freeway, beds down in a nondescript motel, and immerses herself in a temporary reinvention that turns out to be the start of an entirely different journey. Miranda July's second novel confirms the brilliance of her unique approach to fiction, with July's wry voice, perfect comic timing, unabashed curiosity about human intimacy, and palpable delight in pushing boundaries. All Fours tells the story of one woman's quest for a new kind of freedom. Part absurd entertainment, part tender reinvention of the sexual, romantic, and domestic life of a 45-year-old female artist, All Fours transcends expectations while excavating our beliefs about life lived as a woman. It's very vague in the blurb, but I've heard amazing things about this book. I borrowed it once from the library and I was going to read it, but I just didn't have the time. So this year is going to be my time for books, and I can't wait to dive into that one. Next is a book called Greta and Valden. I've heard a few people talk about this book, but an irresistible and big-hearted international bestseller that follows a brother and sister as they navigate queerness, multiracial identity, and the dramas big and small of their entangled, unconventional family, all while flailing their way to love. It's been a year since his ex-boyfriend dumped him and moved from Auckland to Buenos Aires, and Valden is doing fine. He has a good flat with his sister, Greta, a good career where his colleagues only occasionally reminded him that he is the solitary person in the office, and a good friend who he only sleeps with when he's sad. But when work sends him to Argentina and he's thrown back to his former lover's orbits, Valden is forced to confront the feelings he's been trying to ignore and the future he wants. Greta is not letting her painfully unrequited crush, or her possibly pointless master's thesis, or her pathetic academic salary get her down. She would love to focus on the charming fellow grad student she meets at a party and her friendships with the circle of similarly floundering 20-somethings, but her chaotic family life won't stop. Her mother is keeping secrets, her nephew is having a gay crisis, and her brother has suddenly flown to South America without a word. Sharp, hilarious, and with an undeniable emotional momentum that builds to an exuberant conclusion. Exuberant is the word of the year. Greta and Valden careens us through the siblings' misadventures and the messy dramas of their sprawling, eccentric family. So I've heard Jack, you're gonna hear me say Jack a lot because I watch a lot of his videos, but I've heard Jack talk about this book and I really wanted to read it. It sounded really interesting, talking about like love and growing up and kind of adulthood, and I thought it'd be really cool to read that. Next is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I bet you've heard about this book. It's very famous. It's like a piece of old literature, and it's crazy long. I swear it's like this big. But thrown in prison for a crime he has not committed, Edward Dantès is confined to the grim fortress of If. There he learns of the great hoard of treasure hidden on the Isle of Monte Cristo and becomes determined not only to escape, but to unearth the treasure and use it to plot the destruction of the three men responsible for his incarceration. A huge popular success when it was first serialized in the 1840s, Dumas was inspired by a real-life case of wrongful imprisonment when writing his epic tale of suffering and retribution. This intrigues me as it's based on a true story, and also I don't really read a lot of old fiction or classic literature, and I thought it'd be really interesting for me to at least read one piece of classic literature this year, and I'm very excited to I hope I can finish that book and not get burnt out from reading it. Next is Unlikely Animals. Oh, I cannot speak. Next is Unlikely Animals by Annie Hartnett. A lost young woman returns to small town New Hampshire under the strangest of circumstances in this one-of-a-kind novel of life, death, and whatever comes after, from the acclaimed author of Rabbit Cake. It was a source of entertainment at Maple Street Cemetery, both funny and sad, the kind of story we like best. Natural-born healer Emma Starling once had big plans for her life, but she's lost her way. A med school dropout, she's come back to small town Everton, New Hampshire, to care for her father, dying from a mysterious brain disease. Clive Starling has been hallucinating small animals, as well as visions of a ghost of a long-dead naturalist, Ernest Harold Baines, once known for letting wild animals live in his house. This ghost has been giving Clive some ideas on how to spend his final days. Emma arrives home knowing she must face her dad's illness, her mother's judgment, and her younger brother's recent stint in rehab. But she is unprepared to find that her former best friend from high school is missing, with no one bothering to look for her. The police say they don't spend much time unprepared looking for drug addicts. Emma's dad is the only one convinced the young woman might still be alive, and Emma is hopeful he could be right. Someone should look for her at least. Emma isn't really trying to be a hero, but somehow she and her father set in motion just the kind of miracle the town needs. Set against the backdrop of a small town in the throes of a very real opioid crisis, Unlikely Animals is a tragicomic novel about familial expectations, imperfect friendships, and the possibility of resurrecting that which had been thought irrevocably lost. I really like how this kind of dives into drug addiction and opioid addiction, and I thought it was a very interesting kind of mystery thriller-esque premise that I'm very excited to look into. Actually, I saw this on my friend Caden's TBR, and I thought the cover looked interesting, and I really want to read that book. Okay, next is a book that has very poor reviews, and I've heard very, very mixed opinions. But the next book is Diary of an Oxygen Thief by Anonymous. Hurt people hurt people. Say there is a novel in which Holden Caulfield was an alcoholic and Lolita was a photographer's assistant, and somehow they met in bright lights, big city. He's blinded by love, she by ambition. Diary of an Oxygen Thief is an honest, hilarious, and heart-ending novel, but above all, a very realistic account of what we do to each other and what we allow to have done to us. I'm very interested to read this book. It sounds like it's going to talk about trauma, and Jack rated this 2 stars, so I'm kind of scared. But anyways, I've heard a decent amount of people talk about this book, good things and bad things, and so I'm really excited to see what my perspective on it is and whether I think it's good or not. Next is going to be Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. This is a book that my friend Caden has recommended to me. I've heard lots of people on Book Talk talk about this book, but I haven't read it yet, and it's a memoir, and I'm very excited to read it. The New York Times bestselling from the Grammy-nominated indie rock star Japanese Breakfast, an unflinching, deeply moving memoir about growing up mixed race, Korean food, losing her Korean mother, and forging her own identity in the wake of her loss. In this exquisite story of family, food, grief, and endurance, Michelle Zauner proves herself far more than a dazzling singer, songwriter, and guitarist. With humor and heart, she tells of growing up the only Asian American kid at her school in Eugene, Oregon, of struggling with her mother's particular high expectations of her, of a painful adolescence, of treasured months spent in her grandmother's tiny apartment in Seoul, where she and her mother would bond late at night over heaping plates of food. As she grew up moving to the East Coast for college, finding work in the restaurant industry, performing gigs with her fledgling band, and meeting the man who would become her husband, her Koreanness began to feel even more distant, even as she found the life she wanted to live. It was her mother's diagnosis of terminal pancreatic cancer when Michelle was 25 that forced a reckoning with her identity and brought her to reclaim the gifts of taste, language, and history her mother had given her. Vivacious, lyrical, and honest, Michelle Zauner's voice is so radiantly alive on the page as it is on stage. Rich with intimate anecdotes that will resonate widely, Crying in H Mart is a book to cherish, share, and reread. I'm very, very, very excited to read this book because of the recommendation from my friend, and also I've really wanted to read a memoir this year because I felt like last year was just mainly just literary fiction, maybe some literary romance, and there wasn't really like anything else, and I really wanted to add some different books to this year's list. So it'd be more interesting for me to read, and I would be able to have a broader grasp on all these different topics and different genres, I guess. So I just finished with all the book recommendations and things I wanted to read this year. And I actually realized when I was editing this video that I added on like 3 extra books, and so I just decided to take that off, so that's why it ended weird. But those are my 26 books that I wanted to read in 2026. My Instagram is at Mila Ray Yamada. I'll put that in the description. I'll also link my Pinterest as well. And yeah, those were my 26 books of 2026. And I'm really excited to start up this channel where I'll be doing books and maybe other things as well. I'm not really sure yet, but I'm gonna try to make book reviews off of books I read every week or probably a month. I honestly don't know, but I'm really excited to start this channel, and thank you for watching.